Hi guys, welcome back once again. And now we're going to be covering question 14 this time of our sample paper 1. So let's firstly read through the sample question and see what we can extract from this question. Let's have a look and see if we can identify the technique or the area of knowledge that they are testing us on. And also just gather a bit of a context about the situation and see if we can find what the answers are. So it says here that a firm of solicitors has undertaken a gap analysis to ensure it complies with its anti-money laundering commitments. The report produced states, although largely compliant, there are some areas where the team responsible lacks knowledge. To address this, it is suggested that all staff undergo regular refresher training and a new team is created to focus on onboarding new clients. Although this will require changes to the supporting processes, the supporting systems do not need to be changed. And then the instructions for the question here are, which elements of the target operating model should be updated? Okay, and then it has 5 selections, A to E, which are people, process, information, technology, and organization. Okay, so the first 3 things that just jump out to me immediately, through reading through this is gap analysis. We know that gap analysis is a technique that is taught and used in business analysis. And we also see target operating model. We know that that is also another part of business analysis, another technique that is used. And then we can also see right at the bottom here in the actual questions itself, these elements that we are choosing from here are elements of the POPIT model. So what we need to do is now think about all of these items here and what they're used for, and then apply it to the specific context. Okay, so gap analysis itself. What is gap analysis used for? So we know that gap analysis is usually a systematic process that looks at an existing situation and that it compares it with a desired or target situation that the organization wants to transition to. And the reason for this is that they can then identify where there are differences and where there are changes that need to be made in the organization. And if we look at this specific situation here, this context, where it says a firm of solicitors has undertaken a gap analysis to ensure it complies with its anti-money laundering commitments. So what is taking place here is that this firm of solicitors within their organization, they are now conducting this gap analysis to see what needs to change, what needs to be done in order for them to move towards this target state where they will be compliant with this anti-money laundering status that they need to achieve. So contextually, that's what is actually taking place here. And often gap analysis and target operating models and POPITs are all used together. We sometimes need to use the POPIT. So a POPIT is just a way for us, it's a reference for us so that we can identify which parts of which areas of the organization need to be looked at in order to holistically look at everything that needs to change in the organization. And POPIT is also sometimes used for gap analysis because POPIT is an internal technique. It's looking at holistically what are these internal factors that need to change or we need to identify in the organization. So POPIT, as we know, stands for people, organizations, processes, information, and technology. And we can, when developing a target operating model, which is essentially a model for where we want to get to and where we want to change, it's how does the business need to be established to support this execution of strategy? How do we need to change it? What are the aspects of change that need to take place? And usually it's the details of this which helps us to improve understanding of what is required within the target state. And it's also used as a basis for gap analysis in its current state too. So it then informs us of what roadmap we need to take to achieve our strategic objectives and to reach these goals. And in this specific context, the goal is to be compliant with these anti-money laundering laws or regulations that have now taken place in the organization. So we need to define what the operating model is. This target operating. This is the goal here, is for us as a business analyst in this assignment to define what this operating model is that we need to reach. How do we operate in order to be compliant within this organization? So, and we use POPIT for that. It gives us a holistic view. We can look at the aspects of POPIT, which are giving us an internal perspective of the organization. And we ask questions about all these different elements of POPIT to see what needs to change in all these different categories. And if we take a look at all the aspects of POPIT, if we the dimensions of POPIT, so within the people element, we're looking at the skills, the motivation, the performance objectives, the recruitment approach and criteria, the appraisal and development approach, the salaries and the benefits. And the organization, we're looking at the job roles. Organization, we can think of it in terms of almost like an organizational structure. So we're looking at the job roles, the management structures, the culture, the values, the standards, and the policies. Then the processes, within the processes category of POPIT, we look at the process, the task definitions, business events, and business rules. So everything in relation to the processes in an organization. So what needs to change in the processes for us to operate at this level? Organization, what needs to operate in an organizational context for us to operate at this level? People, what needs to change on a people level for us to operate? And finally, we have the IT, the information and technology. Information is about the data. How do we capture it? How do we store it? How's the information going to be reported and communicated to people? And the technology element is what technology is going to be used in the organization, such as software products, hardware, infrastructure, networking, communication, or any other digital forms of technology. How are we going to use technology in order to operate in this target state, this future state that we want to be in? So those are all the 5 categories of POPIT, and we now need to look at this context here of POPIT and define which of these elements should be updated. So which elements of the target operating model, which we've used POPIT for to create this target operating model, so which elements of it need or should be updated? So we have A, which is people, B, process, C, information, D, technology, and E, organization. So if we look here, although largely compliant, there are some areas where the team responsible lacks knowledge. To address this, it is suggested that all staff undergo regular refresher training and a new team is created to focus on onboarding new clients. Although this will require changes to the supporting processes, the supporting systems do not need the supporting systems do not need to be changed. Okay, so it's asking us select all that apply. Which elements of the target operating model should be updated? Okay, so we now need to find the correct answers for this specific context here. Okay, so if we go through this here, let's see if we can see anything that is being spoken about from the people dimension of POPIT. So it says, although largely compliant, there are some areas where the team responsible lacks knowledge. To address this, it is suggested that all staff undergo regular refresher training. Okay, so we can stop right there. And we know in the people element, it's all about the people, the skills, their performance. And this specific this first statement here in this context, it's talking about updating the people through training and skills. So it's what do they need in order to operate at this level, in this new target state. And that is telling us that A should be updated in the POPIT because we are discussing the people elements of POPIT here. The next, we'll continue talking here. So it says, to address this, it is suggested that all staff undergo regular refresher training and a new team is created to focus on onboarding new clients. Okay, so this here is talking about the organizational perspective of POPIT, because even though it's talking about the employees, it's more talking about the organization from a structural perspective. We can look at it almost in terms of the organizational structure. Which job roles need to be created? Which management structures need to be created? What are the culture, the values, the standards, and the policies in the organization? These are the parts of the organization element of POPIT that we need to include. So that statement is now identifying that organization is another element of POPIT that needs to be updated here. Then, if we continue, we say, although this will require changes to the supporting processes, we stop right there and it says there are going to be changes to the supporting processes. We need to change the process, what people do in the organization. What are the processes that take place? We need to change these processes in order to get to a point where we are compliant with this anti-money laundering, these policies. So the process elements of POPIT is also being spoken about here. And B is another part of POPIT that needs to be updated. Then if we continue, it says the supporting systems do not need to be changed. So we stop there and it says, so what they're saying is there's nothing that needs to be changed from the actual system. So this is referring to the technology element of POPIT, which is saying that nothing needs to be updated inside that category, because in order for us to operate after the gap analysis has been done and we've defined what we need to do to change and what this specific model is that we need to be operating at, this operating model, this target model that we want to get to or transition to, we don't need to do anything with technology. Therefore, in terms of the POPIT or the TOM that we're creating as part of this POPIT, technology does not have to be updated. The technological element of POPIT is not being updated. There's nothing making reference of technology in there. And then finally, we have that last element of POPIT, which is information. And within this context, we can remember that there's nothing being spoken about in terms of information. Because in POPIT, information is the capture, the recording, the reporting of information, and it's tied to a technological aspect, because how is it stored and communicated throughout the organization. And contextually, there's nothing mentioned there about information either. Therefore, select all that apply. We would select A, the people elements of POPIT, B, the process elements of POPIT, and E, the organization elements of POPIT. And we would eliminate C and D, which are the information and technology. So I hope that's helped you identify what the correct answers are here. And it's helped you to sort of understand a little bit more about POPIT and the target operating model and gap analysis. And if you ever get a question like this, hopefully you will have a little bit more insight in how to answer it. So I'll see you in the next question, which will be question 15.